All right, well, I'm running into some issues here with my live streaming, and that's because I followed directions. YouTube has this new thing that they're doing with live streaming, and I followed the directions, and nothing happened. So that's very frustrating. I don't like it when things don't go my way. Is that unique to me? I don't think so. But it is definitely in line with what we are talking about, which is Hati and Skoll, which are the two mythological wolves in Norse mythology that chase after the sun and the moon. And I want to talk to you about how to apply that in our lives and what do we do when we are dealing with issues like that. So let's see here. I'm trying to, again, am I even live? This is really quite annoying. My software says that I am, but YouTube does not seem to be telling me that I'm live. Okay, so that says I'm live, so let's go there, see what's happening. Okay, so that is happening. All right, so frustrating. All right, so I'm going to be talking about Hati and Skoll, the Norse mythological wolves that seek to devour the sun and the moon. I'm going to be talking to you about the emptiness within us that is responsible for these wolves within us. So let's just be clear about what mythology is all about. Mythology, true mythology, is channeled information from the gods, the ancestors, the elves, the shining ones, the ascended masters, whatever word you want to use. I don't even know if I repeated myself there. They're sending coded holographic information to teach us how to evolve. And so mythology is going to have multiple applications. True mythology is always something that is timely. So any mythology that you read that you can't relate to, even though they're talking about, sometime in the past, if you can't relate to it and follow it and get something from it, it's not true mythology. True mythology is timeless. And so it operates on multiple levels, but what it's really doing is all of the symbolism within mythology, all of the gods and what they're doing and all of the beings. This is actually revealing things that happen within us. For instance, Ragnarok. Ragnarok is the end of the universe as we know it, where all of the forces that oppose each other come together and annihilate each other. And from that, a new heaven and a new earth, and the gods reach a higher harmonic. That is all symbolic of what happens within you on a daily basis, on a moment-to-moment basis. It may also be what's going to happen to the universe. I don't know and I don't care. Because for me, if I can't apply it to my life, it's meaningless. Something that's going to happen billions of years into the future has very little practical application to this tiny life that I live for, less than 100 years if I'm lucky. So we look at how it applies to us. So Hati and Skoll are the wolves that are chasing down the sun and the moon. And in order to understand, here we go. In order to understand what these wolves represent, we first have to start talking about what a wolf is. So let me see. First off, do we have any people here watching? How many people are watching? 9 people watching. So the deal is with these live streams is that this is a live Q&A. It is not a free-for-all discussion. I can't control what you do or what you don't do. I would prefer that you only ask questions. I will simply scroll past anybody who's just throwing out opinions or wanting to talk to each other, or especially trolls. I will get rid of trolls. But We just want questions. So you guys are being well behaved, so I don't need to make another speech about that. All right, so Hati and Skoll. In order to understand wolves in Norse mythology, we need to take a look at what wolves were like for them. So I've talked about this before, but I'll share it again, is that in modern times when we're dealing with our ancestral mythology, since we don't live in those times, since we're no longer pre-Christian tribal people who don't have technology, we look around for things around us to try and relate to so that we can try and understand our ancestors. And so people look to, for instance, Native Americans. And so they mistakenly come to the conclusion that our ancestors looked at wolves in the same ways that Native Americans do. But the difference between like Native Americans and our ancestors is that Native Americans were Neolithic hunter-gatherers. They didn't have they didn't have animals that they kept, most of them. They didn't have sheep or cows or pigs. So when wolves came into Germanic tribal life, they came to destroy. They came to steal animals and kill them. And of course, they were just doing their job. They were feeding. That's what they did. They feed off of animals. And so here's this, this like a supermarket full of food for them. So they would come and take the animals and kill them. So wolves were seen exactly like this picture next to me right now. This is when you saw them the most. This is how you experience them. And so this became a symbol for hunger that cannot be satisfied, ravenous instincts that cannot be controlled. And so we have to talk about Fenris before we talk about his children, Hati and Skoll, hatred and shame. The real name is mockery, but I prefer to use the word shame because that's the result of mockery, is to create shame within the individual. Before we look at them, we have to look at Fenris. So Fenris was the wolf that was so powerful that not even the gods could keep Fenris tame. And Fenris's jaws were so big that they feared that he would swallow the entire universe. And so they used the rope of subtlety, the magical thread of subtlety, to keep him bound. And they used the god of highest awareness, which is Tiu, the god who represents the highest spiritual awareness that we have. Now, people are going to mistake that for Odin. Odin represents highest self-awareness, the discovery of one's own divinity and being in shamanic ecstasy of that knowledge and awareness. That is Odin. Tiu, it represents the highest spiritual awareness. Tiu is, his original name is Di. The original name for Zeus is Di. The original name for the Chinese king of the heavens who lived in the North Star is Di. And so that is his essence. His essence is the highest. And that's why his rune is an arrow that's pointing up, because it represents the top of the tent. It represents the apex of the universe, the apex of the sky when you look up at it, which is, for people in the northern latitude, the northern star, the North Star. So that means that our highest awareness, our highest spiritual awareness is in constant battle with the forces within us that seek to devour us. And so I want to focus on what happens when we end up in battle with that black hole within us. So that black hole within us gets stimulated when we walk away from our true soul path, what my ancestors called their orlog, what you've probably heard as dharma, but people used to call fate. And so fate, unfortunately, has this connotation of something that happens to you. It's written in the stars, you have nothing to do with it, and it happens to you. But fate is actually your own creation. And through your own actions, through your own beliefs, through your own assumptions, and then the actions that you take based upon those assumptions, that creates a future that you must live out. So, like the Norns, people want to pray to the Norns to change their fate. You can't do that because the Norns are actually simply obeying you. When you adopt beliefs, when you adopt assumptions about your relationship to the universe, and you take actions based upon that, based upon your desires, your fears, whatever it is, when you're not operating from your highest integrity of yourself, then you create a future that you must live out, which will have challenges associated with it. It's not something that happened to you, you did it yourself. And when you can understand that, then the only thing that's required is that you do the work to stay connected to your highest awareness. But being in this physical reality, we will have to deal with this within us. And each of us has their own Fenris that is seeking to devour us. And if you've ever been in that position where you get wrapped up in any kind of misery, where you feel like you have this black hole inside of you that's just consuming you, and you find it difficult to know who you are and where you're going and what's going on in life. What's happening is that the Fenris within you is gaining power and gaining strength, and it just like Hati and Skoll, who go through the sky to swallow the sun and the moon, what ends up happening is that the light of your soul, you become blind to it. The light of your mind, you become blind to that. And so then you're trapped in this cycle of having the black hole inside of you dictating all of what you do. And it's like quicksand. Every action that you take to try and extricate yourself from the pain only fuels it and makes it stronger. So we'll talk a little bit about that. I'll muse about my experiences of it. But first, let me talk to you about why the two wolves are called hatred, and why they're called hatred and mockery, and what happens with us. So bear in mind that hatred blinds the sun. Just like Rahu and Ketu, whenever you see an eclipse, that is representative of Rahu. And when you see an eclipse, which is the sun seemingly being devoured in the sky, that is symbolic. And one of the reasons it's so frightening to us is that on an unconscious level, it represents the death of our soul. And so what really happens, because these things don't last, it's an illusion that this can never happen, because the soul is infinite. It can never be extinguished. Your infinite life can never be extinguished. And so when we have this experience that we have lost our soul, it is really just that the light of our soul has been clouded over by the illusions that come from our Fenris within us. When this being within us, it's not a being, it's an aspect of us. When this aspect within us takes precedence, it swallows up our ability to operate from our soul. And so Hati is called hatred, or is translated as hatred. And so why does hatred destroy the soul? First, we need to be clear, and we need to go into the mythology here. And I think I've gotten rid of it. I think I did. I had it up here. I was going to look at it. The mythology is very clear. But in order to understand what the verse in our mythological lore says, we have to understand that our ancestors saw the sun as female and the moon as male. And so Hati chases after the shining priest. So priest is male, so the shining priest would be the moon. Excuse me. Skoll. Mockery chases after the shining priest, which is the moon. And that Hati chases after the bright bride of the sky. So because of that, we know exactly what it means. It means that hatred is chasing after the sun, and that mockery is chasing after the moon. So let's talk about the soul first. And why does hatred consume the soul? So when we look at hatred, hatred is not the opposite of love. It is actually the flip side of love. Love and hate are the same coin. The opposite of love is apathy, no feeling, not caring whatsoever. And so the worst thing is not when your spouse hates you. If your spouse hates you, it means that they started loving you and you're not doing something that they want, or whatever it is that's happening that's making them angry, and so they have feelings of hatred towards you. They have to love you first before they can hate you. The worst thing is when your spouse just wakes up one day and says, "You know what? I just don't have any feelings for you. I'm not angry. I just don't have any feelings for you anymore." I've had that experience. It's horrible. It's horrible. It's the worst. It's worse than having them mad at you. It's like you don't exist. So hatred comes from a need that is not being met. And so when we operate from fear, when we operate from need, we are operating from the assumption that the universe does not want to give us what we need. And so when we operate from that assumption and we start to envy others for the money that they have, for the love that they have, for the health that they have, whatever it is, that envy means that you want something that somebody else has, and the assumption that you don't deserve to have it. And so that can create a hatred. If you've got somebody in your life that you love, that you want to be with, that you want close to you, that you want to love you, and they don't love you back, or they betray your trust, then that creates a hatred. And I'm certainly not here to say that that's an easy thing to turn on or turn off. But ideally, we want to be in the position where we can accept people exactly where they are. And so how do you do that when somebody you care about betrays you, or when somebody you care about doesn't love you in the same way or doesn't give back to you? How do you not be angry? How do you not have hatred towards them? But that hatred will swallow up your soul. And what those kinds of feelings do, hatred would be the extreme. But what those kinds of feelings do, that we aren't enough, that we don't have enough, and we get angry and we get resentful towards the universe, which is really towards ourselves. We're angry at ourselves. Then we can start taking actions that are going to create, because the thing about Fenris is the more that you feed him, the more hungry he gets. And, I have no idea, that's not in the mythology, but I would believe that's true, which is why there's a fear that he would swallow the universe. Because the more that you feed him, the hungrier he gets. And so when we take actions based on our fear, our anger, our pain, our misery, and we do things to try to satisfy the desires and hunger within us. This is, why when people become thieves. A thief is somebody who believes that they don't deserve to have their resources met. And they don't believe the universe will provide them with it and fulfill them with it. So they take matters into their own hands and they become thieves. It's same true when, let's say, you're in a relationship with somebody that you're committed to, and instead of dealing with the problems within that relationship, or maybe just because you got a wandering eye, you go and you cheat on your partner out of a need to get something fulfilled within you. The need, I need to have that. You need to sleep with that woman or that man, or that man will treat you better. So you, instead of telling your husband you want to leave, you go and have an affair with somebody else. It's coming from that emptiness, coming from fear. You know, I have a thing about relationships and people cheating in relationships. To my knowledge, to the best of my knowledge, I've never cheated. You know, I've never cheated on anybody. And I've never gone behind anybody's back. I've never lied to any partner I've been with. And my thought is, if somebody I'm with, if I've come to the conclusion that they can never meet my needs, my desires, that I won't find fulfillment with them, then the only logical thing to do is to leave and look for somebody that will. So I don't understand why people I mean, I understand why people cheat. Don't get me wrong, I understand it. But, you know, to be able to live with that, the energy that it takes to keep lies going, you know, that kind of energy. So lying is another one. You know, lying because you don't believe that the honest truth about yourself is going to be acceptable. You lie to steal. This is this ravenous wolf within you that's creating this black hole. And the more that you feed that black hole, the bigger it gets, and the more it puts a shadow over your soul, which is your integrity. When you're connected to your soul, you are willing to take risks. You are willing to tell people the truth, whether they want to hear it or not. You are willing to take actions towards others, even if it means you won't get what you want, because you know that the universe will provide for you. This comes from a strong spiritual sense of self. So that's why in the opening here I have this picture of Hati, who's chasing after the sun there, is about to swallow the sun, and I've got spiritual emptiness. Because your spiritual power comes from your connection to your soul. And on the other side, we've got, again, a picture of Rahu swallowing the sun, but I'm using that for the moon right now. So that would be mockery in the bottom right-hand corner there, swallowing the moon, which means emotional emptiness. So now let's talk about the other side of the equation, which is the wolf mockery is chasing after the moon. The wolf mockery is chasing after the moon, seeking to devour it. So what is mockery? Mockery is, you know, anything. It's saying anything that tries to demean somebody, tries to make them feel bad about themselves. So if you tell somebody they're ugly, or that they're stupid, or that, you know, they're an idiot, or nobody loves you, or, you know, these kinds of things, you know, that feeling, you're attacking somebody's essence with words in order to try and demean them and make them lose their confidence in themselves. And so the moon represents our mind. Our mind and our emotions are linked. And a truly calm mind is somebody who has all of their feelings. This is one of the biggest issues, if not the biggest issue I have with the love and light crowd. What somebody said to me earlier, they called it the new cage spirituality instead of new age, new cage. Because it's a cage in there, and it seeks after, it's cotton candy. And I could list off teachers and practices and stuff which I think are new age nonsense, but the reason why it bothers me is because it doesn't address the real human condition, and it doesn't address real human evolution. It's only cotton candy. It's just taking a pill to make things better. I love the movie The Matrix, but that idea of just take a pill. Take one pill and you'll be woke, and take another pill and you will be in illusion. And people want to do that with spiritual practices and spiritual teachings, and and it comes from a denial of the pain that they're carrying. So many people chase after spirituality as an escape from their pain, and some of you are watching me right now. You want me to give you a pill which will take your pain away. And I wish I knew what that pill was. There isn't a pill that will take your pain away. that won't actually create this inside of you. This is what drug addiction is. Drug addiction is seeking to escape your pain instead of working through it. So pain, challenge, misery, sadness, these are things that are unavoidable, especially if you seek to become spiritually enlightened. And so the whole idea that you have to be in your bliss all of the time is actually a very toxic teaching. Which isn't to say that I want people to be miserable. I have no interest in being miserable myself. I want to be happy all the time, just like anybody else. But we need to have access to all of our thoughts, all of our feelings, and all of our emotions, and take conscious, constructive action, regardless of whatever we're feeling. If you're feeling good and squishy and that leads to doing something conscious and constructive, I hope that is the rest of your life. If you're full of pain and misery and anger and fear and whatever, but you know that in order to heal yourself and heal others, you have to take an action that's completely opposite what you want to do, that is enlightenment, the knowledge to know what actions to take regardless of how you're feeling. And so mockery is a way to take you out of your ability to reflect on your soul. That's what meditation is. Meditation is reflecting on the light of the soul, whether that be mantra meditation or emptiness meditation. And again, I know people, and I've run into people who meditate to feel better. I like that that's the end result of the Qigong that I teach. I do teach a very powerful form of meditation called Celestial Qigong. You can find that at courses.thunderwizard.com. You can also find it at neo.thunderwizard.com. I do that because it actually gives me a physical high and it makes me feel good. But it also brings up all of my unconscious garbage. So it can be very challenging while I'm getting the payoff. But there are people who their sole purpose in meditation is to try and make themselves feel good all the time. And unfortunately, life just doesn't work like that. So, we could talk more and more about this, but I'm going to go ahead and start answering some questions. Again, I'm only interested in your questions and to get my attention, to make sure that I answer your question, write the word question, because if you look like you're just throwing out an opinion, if I can't tell it's a question, I'll scroll past it. Okay, so let's take a look and see what we got going on here. It's not a question, not a question. Crone woman walking question. What role does Loki and Mother Hela play in dealing with unconscious hatred and shame? It's actually a pretty good question. It's a deep question, but it's a pretty good one. Let me see what I can do to take a stab at that. Sorry, just drinking a little protein drink here so I don't get too hungry. So Loki would represent the illusion within us. The illusion within us, actually, Loki doesn't represent the illusion within us. Loki represents the force of the universe that brings to your awareness the illusions that you have, that, having money will make you happy, that marrying a supermodel in and of itself will make you happy. That is an illusion. And so what Loki would do in that, let's say somebody has the illusion, and I know there's people listening to me now that have this illusion, that if they win the lottery and had a ton of money, that all of their problems would go away and they would be happy and they would be fulfilled. Then Loki would come along and say, hey, yeah, you know what you need to do? You need to win the lottery. So let's come up with this strategy. Now you're going to have to buy 500 lottery tickets a day, but don't worry, you'll win the lottery. You'll become a billionaire, so you'll be fine. but you're going to spend all of your time figuring out which liquor stores to go to and which places to go at which times of the day to get the lottery tickets. And when you have enough, when you have 500 a day, that's the magic number. When you have 500, after a month of that, you're going to get the winning lottery number and you're going to be a billionaire and it'll all be okay. It's total illusion. But what would happen is that you would end up going broke and losing everything to realize, what am I doing? So Loki is the force that comes to you with some kind of deception based on your own illusion. This is the thing. Loki has no interest and is not capable of deceiving you about something that isn't already inside of you. The other aspect of Loki is that Loki would come to you with that, and if you thought about it and went, you know what, that's such a tempting idea, but if I really think about it, money is really not going to do it for me, and I don't need to be a billionaire to be happy. And then Loki says, good for you. That's what I wanted you to come to the realization. Now let me open up and lift back the curtain so you can see that money will never bring you happiness. So that's what Loki does. And you asked me, what role does Loki play in dealing with the unconscious? Hatred and shame, specifically, you asked. So when it comes to unconscious hatred and shame, again, these are coming from false understandings, illusions. Let's talk about shame for a moment. So hatred is when you're angry for something that you don't have. You feel threatened by something and you get angry at it. I mean, racists are a good example. They get mad at other races because they think other races are going to, breed them out of existence. It's just, so it comes from this fear of, that it comes from a fear that they're not worthy, that nobody sees them, and that just something outside of them is going to come and make them disappear. So hatred comes from the illusion that you are not loved, that the universe doesn't love you. Shame would be feeling, self-directed negativity about, your worthiness. So on one hand, hatred is the external expression of emptiness, and shame is the internalized expression of emptiness. The sad thing about hatred is generally a reaction to the emptiness within. The fear and the emptiness and the belief that you won't get anything. You get angry and it turns into outward hatred. Shame is the internal expression of that, where, usually, unfortunately, shame for the most part is something that is taught in childhood. Shame, what happens with little kids from 0 to 4 especially, that's the most formative years. If somebody's going to become a narcissist, if somebody's going to become a pathological serial killer, it's going to happen between the ages of 0 and 4 most of the time. Because the ages of 0 to 4 is when the self is developed. And that's when the parents, especially the mother, but both parents, give the child a sense of identity. And the way that's done is by mirroring to the child, nurturing the child, loving the child, touching the child, allowing the child to have feelings. This is what, like the terrible twos, when kids go through these temper tantrums, how the parents respond to those temper tantrums will help the kid to develop a sense of self. Because it's in that experience that the child learns, it's okay for me to be upset right now. I'm still a good person. But if they never get that, then you have people who are adults who live their lives having temper tantrums because they don't know how to not operate from whatever feeling is going through them, and they believe that they're unloved and all that kind of stuff. That happens in ages 0 to 4. So unfortunately, shame, that's when shame is created. But Shame is the direct result of not feeling worthy to let your anger out, and so instead you turn it towards yourself. So the role that Loki plays in both of those is to stimulate that through a deception which exists within you, a temptation that exists within you, an illusion that exists within you. And what Mother Hela does, Hela is the mother of the underworld. So, what she does when you're in the body, I'm not sure that I'm able to say. I can tell you what she does after death. So Hela is the place. Hela is, in fact, the place, the underworld. She is that. And she, like the mother, she surrounds. So hell is a cave. And so what happens to souls after they, humans after they die, the souls that have not achieved their highest fulfillment. Do you notice why I said that? I didn't say their highest awareness or they haven't achieved their enlightenment. I said they haven't achieved their highest fulfillment. Totally different way of looking at things. When the soul has not achieved its highest fulfillment yet, it goes to the underworld, and the underworld is Mother Hela. She surrounds you. And what she is she's like an opaque mirror, but she reflects back only that which you bring with you. And so if you come with self-hatred, for example, like let's say, by the way, none of these people who I'm going to mention don't have self-hatred. Hitler. There's no way that Hitler did not go to the underworld full of self-hatred and guilt. It's impossible. He may have had some mental insanity that prevented him from becoming aware of it when he was alive, but the soul knew exactly what was going on. And so when he went to the underworld, I don't know what happened, but a scenario would be he goes to the underworld and he's encased by Mother Hela. And she is this opaque mirror, which means she has no agenda. She has nothing but love, which means that she accepts everything about you, everything you've done. But because she is a mirror, what ends up happening is that you will create whatever was in your unconscious during your lifetime will be reflected back to you in her. The walls of hell are her. And so you could spend thousands of years in a self-created hell, which would only be the reflection of your internal self-hatred and guilt and all of that. And so she will sit with you. She won't try and talk you out of it. She won't try and heal you. She won't try and punish you. She will just let you do what you need to do. If you go to the underworld and you need to live in a party atmosphere and heal yourself, and she'll let you create that. And she'll be there. When you're ready to let go of your ego musings about yourself in whichever way it is, then she will then guide you towards self-reflection, true self-reflection, and learning why you did what you did. When your mother didn't love you enough, and so you decided that all women were evil, and so you were mean to women all of your life. You get to that point, you become aware that, yeah, that was my doing, I did that. Then you'll be given an opportunity then to come back and pursue your desires again, which is what we call rebirth. So that's the role that Loki and Mother Hela play in dealing with unconscious hatred and shame. In a nutshell, in my opinion, today. Tomorrow I might change my mind. Crone Woman Walking has thrown down $2. Thank you very much. Scuba Gamer, question. Could you elaborate on the myth in which Loki killed the otter which had spiritual properties attached to his skin? I don't remember that myth offhand. I'll have to go back and research that again, so I can't answer that for you today. If I don't know the answer, I don't pretend to know it, and I don't have a good answer for you today, so I can't talk about that. Daggers, question. Did you delete any of your old live videos you made in the summer, in May or June? No, because I wasn't able to do any live videos What had happened is that years ago I had uploaded a video having to do talking about I can't remember what it was, but I took a video off of the net and I copied it and I put it in there, just briefly. And those people found it and got upset. And I've found this out, that you can complain if somebody uploads a video of yours. You can complain and ask them to take it down within 7 days, or you can just complain and ask YouTube to give them a copyright strike. So whenever you have a live channel, I got a copyright strike for that. I was very upset about it, and I tried emailing them and calling them and saying, hey, I took it down. Sorry, it was a mistake. Can you please tell them to take away the copyright strike? And I didn't hear back from anybody. So I had to not do live question and answer for 3 months. So they're not deleted, they don't exist. All right. Let's see, what else are we talking about here? Next question. Veronica's secret question. Now that you've taught/convinced me why I'm better off without any drugs, even marijuana, how can I get my mood swings under control quicker? I cannot yet afford your courses. Well, first off, I need to dissuade you from the idea that you have to control your moods. That's what got you into trouble in the first place. That's why people do drugs, marijuana especially, is to try and control your feelings. Every time you try and control your feelings, you are taking violence against yourself. Nobody likes to be controlled. So why would you want to do that to yourself? Don't get me wrong, I understand that you want to feel good. I want to feel good too. And I have mood swings like you wouldn't imagine. Well, maybe you could imagine. I have mood swings just like everybody else. So I would strongly recommend you take a look at whether or not you have an addiction. And if so, I would get into a 12-step group and I would work the 12 steps. 12 steps, one of the main result of the 12 steps is that it gives you the ability to take contrary action. It gives you the ability to take action regardless of whatever feeling you have. The other thing I would suggest is, there isn't a quick fix. If you were taking drugs to control your moods, it means that there's an ongoing situation inside of you that needs to be dealt with. And it's not going to go away. And I don't recommend that people do what a lot of people who come onto my channel do and say, whenever I recommend that they do something, they'll say, oh, that's okay, I'll take care of it myself. I've been on the path of self-knowledge for years, and it's a crock of shit. They're full of crap. You can't heal yourself. There's probably some really deep-seated unconscious childhood shit that needs to be dealt with. So I would say go to a psychologist, go to a counselor, and if not, go to a 12-step group. There's not an easy fix. I don't have a magic pill for you. It takes a lot of hard work, and you can't do it yourself. So that would be my suggestion for you. Oh, Scuba Gamer question. If Tyr was the original king of the gods, how does the myth of Odin, Vili, and Ve creating Midgard fit into things? It doesn't fit in very neatly, does it? Listen, I'm just telling you the facts. The facts are that Tyr, Tiu, Zeus, Dieus, Pita, that is the original king of the gods in the Indo-European mythology. So the thing about mythology is that mythology isn't going to come and tell you, because mythology is not linear. A mythology is circular. Time is not linear. So you're looking at it from a linear time perspective. Oh, Tyr was the king of the gods here, and then Odin was the king of the gods here. So how does that? It doesn't matter. Once Odin becomes king of the gods, he's been king of the gods forever. That's how mythology works. That's how energy works. That's how everything works, right? I mean, I would recommend don't look at it so linearly. Just look at it for what it is. That's the best answer I can give to you and all that. Wait, Ketu kills the mind? So please ask the word question. That shows me that you're listening to me, and it shows that you're respecting the process here. But I will give you the benefit of the doubt here. Captain Subliminal says, wait, Ketu kills the mind? Ketu, yes. Ketu would be, if Rahu represents hatred, which is really your own hatred, you're wanting to consume out of need and destroy, and you're destroying your own spiritual connection through your appetites, through your addictions, through your chasing after your illusions. Ketu takes you out of illusion. So what is the mind? The mind is a reflection of the soul. The mind is not the soul. The mind is something that we're given in order to interface with three-dimensional reality. It's not the intellect, but it's the emotional interface. And emotions are reactions to our desires in this three-dimensional false world. And so emotions, love, hate, desire, fear, sadness, these things are reactions to the illusion of this reality. So what Ketu says is Ketu mocks that by saying all of these emotions that you're having are meaningless, because the ultimate truth is beyond all of that. So bear in mind that Rahu and Ketu have both positive and negative. The positive aspect of Ketu is that you become aware and you go, oh my God, I have been wasting my time thinking that that's going to make me happy. That's not making me happy. Now that I've had that, I mean, I know that it's meaningless, so I'm gonna let that go. And you laugh. You laugh at the silliness of thinking something, impermanent was going to bring you your soul satisfaction. The negative side of Ketu is what are those people called? Terrorism. A suicidal terrorist is somebody whose Ketu is flipped and is not working well. They're saying that this life is meaningless and the only thing that matters is spirituality, and so I'm going to blow everybody up, including myself, to make a point. But that's the warped aspect of Ketu. So when I say Ketu kills the mind, I'm talking about that part of us that is not in line with the truth. And any one of the planets has a positive and negative, including Rahu and Ketu. Captain Subliminal, that's not a question. Captain Subliminal question. Thoughts on Pluto? Is it another planet that destroys the fear matrix? I'm not. So Captain Subliminal, I recommend that you spend some time watch my channel. I don't teach Western astrology, I teach Vedic astrology. So I can't teach something I don't know anything about. I don't know anything about the outer planets in terms of astrology. Zeralath, question. How do Hati and Skoll affect the three selves? How do they affect the three selves? I really don't know how to answer that. In the same way that they affect the soul and the mind. The three selves are not... I'm trying to formulate an answer to your question because I haven't thought about it like that. So the three selves, for those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, let's see if I can show you a picture. The three selves, there they are. So here we have three centers in the body. We have a center in up here, which we call our third eye. We have a center in the chest, and then we have a center in the navel. These also are superimposed on top of three different chakras, but they're not chakras. They are they're also imposed on three cauldrons of energy. So you can meditate on these areas, bring energy into them, and if you do it properly, you can change your body and change your aura, and ideally become an immortal. That's the theory anyway. So these three selves, the only self that is you is the middle one. The middle one, and you can't see it, but I'm touching my heart center here. The middle one is where your soul resides. So your soul is the identity that's experiencing this lifetime. In order for you to be able to take actions based on your spiritual awareness, which leads you to your highest evolution, you must have all three of these selves communicating. And that is the challenge. And for people who are suffering from the delusions of Hati and Skoll, their three selves are not communicating. They're in chaos. The upper self is, we could call it your higher self. So just to make it more simple, your higher self simply looks at the soul as the soul is going through life and is there as an advisor. If you choose, you can meditate and try and connect yourself to your higher self, which is, of course, part of what we should be doing, so that we can get proper advice, awareness about ourselves. And what the higher self does is the higher self will always tell you information that is simultaneously best for you and best for others. The higher self will always tell you that you are connected to every other living being in existence, and how your actions not only affect yourself but affect other people. I recently went through this where I had to tell somebody something that I know that they didn't want to hear, and I knew there was a good chance it would destroy any connection and relationship that we had. And if I had listened to my selfishness, I wouldn't have said it. I would have said something else to placate the person and get what I wanted out of them. But my higher self was saying, look, this isn't helping you. You're not going to end up getting anything out of this. It's only going to hurt you. And worse than that, it doesn't help them. They need somebody to tell them the truth, and what they do with it is not your problem. But the kindest thing you could do at this point is tell them something they don't want to hear. And so that's why teachers are able to do that, because teachers represent the higher self. They're an external they actually are, if they're a true teacher, they are an externalization of your own higher self. And so that's why a true teacher will tell you what you don't want to hear, even if it means that you will stop learning from them. So the upper self is not you, it is part of you that gives you guidance. Your lower self is not you either, but it is more intimately connected. And just like in this picture here, the middle and the lower are closer to each other. So they're more closely aligned. The lower self is a middle self in training. So this is why it's extremely important to operate from your soul, because if you don't, what's going to happen is that lower self in there is going to learn a lot of really bad habits from you, and you are actually going to sabotage the progress of that lower self. What happens when you die, in my opinion today, it may change tomorrow, but in my opinion today, and this is also based on other teachings and other traditions around the world, is that when you die is that the upper self and the lower self separate from the soul. The lower self goes down into the earth and becomes a nature spirit for a while. And then it is reincarnated either as another soul or another lower self, or if it gets the opportunity to go up in its evolution and become an actual human soul. This is why this is connected to the dwarves. This is what dwarves are. Dwarves are humanoid. So all of your human experience of all of your psychological issues, your unconscious, all of that is in your lower self. So to answer your question now, I had to explain that. To answer your question, how does Hati and Skoll affect the three selves? The same way that it affects the soul. Because the three selves, their karma is intertwined with each other. So that's why the higher self is trying to help, but it's up to you to listen. The way that the communication works is that the higher self talks directly to the lower self, and then the lower self communicates that to the middle self. The middle self makes decisions and tells the lower self to go do things. When you have people who can't control themselves, they get into bad relationships, they do destructive things, they get into addictions, that means the lower self is in control. And so the balance is off, because the lower self should be listening to both the higher self and the middle self. If the middle self, out of fear, gives control to the lower self, then That's why. That's why people, can say, that they, like, for instance, when it comes to money, people can want to bring money into their lives, but for some reason they just keep sabotaging themselves. The rest of us looking at you go, why do you keep sabotaging yourself? You're only doing it to yourself. But they can't. They think it's happening to them. It means that their lower self is not in communication with the higher self, and the middle self has not owned its responsibility to sit on the throne. The king or the queen doesn't go out and fight wars. The king or the queen doesn't go out and implement strategy. The king or the queen sits on the throne and makes proclamations, and then the army or the, whoever it is, arms of the government go out and take action. And that's what the lower self does. The lower self goes out and take action. So when the soul is not owning it and sitting on the throne of a person's life, then it would be as if you've got some puppet king in there who doesn't have any power and isn't making any of the decisions, and all of the the lords and ladies are out there for themselves, trying to get as much money and power as they can. It's a power grab. So to answer your question, how does it affect the three selves? There's no difference. It's the same. Oh, Scuba Gamer question, how can we make offerings to Uller in today's world? Oh, Scuba Gamer, again, did I say this earlier? Watch my channel. I don't think I've ever talked about Uller. So I don't have an answer for you. I know very little about that god. So I can't answer that question. Would you consider boxing matches, skiing, archery, for example, considering he's the acer of those things? Works for me. If it works, don't fix it. That sounds like a very reasonable assumption. Seb 999 question: do you acknowledge that enemies exist? What does that mean? What kind of a question is that? First off, that's not an honest question. You're setting me up. Is it okay to hate and mock enemies? So this is really what you're asking. What you want is you want me to co-sign you having hatred and mocking whatever enemy is. So if I say something you don't like, does that mean I'm your enemy? Or is your enemy somebody that's coming after you, trying to break down your door and kill you? Who is your enemy? So Seb 999, my suggestion for you is to watch more of my videos where I talk about getting rid of the fear. If you have enemies in your life, I have news for you. You created them. Everything in your life is an external expression of your internal reality. Bear in mind, anybody that you hate and mock is what's called projection. I recommend that you go and Google this phrase, psychological projection. Go and read that, and then you'll know. Is it okay for you to do that to yourself? Because that's what you'll be doing. Having boundaries and protecting yourself from other people is not the same as hating and mocking an enemy. So I got to be honest with you, you can feel the reaction in me. And this is my projection, by the way, so you get to experience it. I look at that question and I feel some negative feelings towards you. I say to myself, what a weak person that you would want to be given permission to have enemies in your life that you can hate and mock. Assuming that you're asking about yourself. Maybe you're asking the opposite. Maybe you're wanting me to say that you're not supposed to do that. But that's not the feeling I get. The feeling I get is that you want to do that and you're asking for my permission to go ahead and do that. So is it okay? Yeah, sure, it's okay if you want to live with it. If you want to live with that, because what you do to others, you're going to end up living through yourself. So is it okay? Sure, it's okay. I don't recommend it. I recommend acknowledging that the hate and the mockery that you have towards others is feelings you have towards yourself, and that every time that you indulge in that, you are damaging yourself. And why would somebody want to do that? Lucifer Apollo question. Come back. Where'd it go? A lot of questions today. Okay, what happened to it? If our karma here in this life is learning a lesson through painful experiences, well, let me just say I have said that probably, but I don't say that. What I say is that karma in this life is learning how to achieve all of your desires. I think the idea of learning a lesson has shame attached to it, meaning you did something wrong in a past life and you're going to be punished. Karma is not punishment. Karma is simply balancing out you finding the best way to achieve your desires. If somebody in a previous life spent their life chasing after religious or ethnic minorities and killing them and putting them to death, that soul in between lives is going to go, man, that was a mistake. I mean, that did not get me what I wanted. So I need to understand that. So I'm choosing to go and experience that in the next life so that I will know both sides of that, not because I want to be good, but because I want to be able to make myself happy, and I can't be happy if I have that delusion. So that's how I see karma. But let me finish your question again. The longer the question, I know you're setting me up. So I try and stop you from setting me up halfway through. Maybe that's my control issues. If our karma here in this life is learning a lesson through painful experiences, is it a karmic lesson of some who inflict pain to others who are unconsciously seeking it? Is it a karmic lesson of some? The question doesn't make sense. Are you asking me that it's your karma that somebody's inflicting pain on you because you're unconsciously seeking it? Yes. Whenever somebody harms you, that is, you have unconsciously asked for that so that you could experience it and learn from it. I don't know what you're asking about them. Your question doesn't make complete sense to me, but that's how I hear it. Oh, Scuba Gamer question, do you ever just feel super appreciative of Odin, Honor, and Lothar? Do you ever? I'm sighing because the longer the question, it's not a question. You're now. Here's what you're doing. I haven't finished the question. I could be wrong. I'm willing to bet that what you want to do is tell everybody your devotion to Odin, Vili, and Ve, and you're going to do it in the form of a question, which I'm forced to read out because I've said to do that. I might be wrong. Let's walk through it. Do you ever just feel super appreciative of Odin, Honor, and Lothar creating us? I genuinely feel extremely happy and grateful that the God... Yeah, so it's really a statement. It's not a question. If you want to ask me an honest question because you don't know the answer, ask me that. If you want to make a statement, own that. That's really all you were doing. So I'm happy for you. You said, I know I sounded cheesy, but I'm feeling extremely optimistic. I'm happy for you. Good for you. I want you to be happy. Congratulations. Question, oh Scuba Gamer, what does it mean if I feel a strong sense that I'm descended from the Aesir? What it means is that you are projecting your own sense of self. What's the word? Immensity. You're not descended from the Aesir. Does that mean if you're descended from the Aesir that nobody else is? Does that mean only white people and you happen to be a white person? Does that mean that you're a special human and you're descended from the Aesir? Or that you're an Aesir in human form? I'm okay with you seeing yourself as an Aesir in human form. But what it means that you've got some, your ego is having a good time with itself. And I don't know if you're right or wrong, but the thing that I'm reacting to is the idea that you're somehow different from everybody else. If you are descended from the Aesir, then so is every other human on the planet. Which doesn't make you all that special. But I do believe that we are divine. I do believe that we are gods in the flesh. So if you want to call yourself an Aesir, great. Again, I don't know the full scope of your question, and so this is my issue. This is what I do. So anyway, Brian Shaver, you please ask the word question and just write a question. I'm going to scroll through all of it because I don't know what's going on. You're not asking me, you're just throwing a bunch of stuff out. But I'll answer a question if you can form it into a question. RHCP, what is that? RHCP ashtray? That's what it looks like. Question: Are Hati and Skoll both a reflection of the unconscious desires towards self-sabotage that lay dormant within man from the ancient trauma that occurred both in past lives? It's a long question. Yeah, I said that earlier. Hati and Skoll are the reflection of the black hole within you. You could state it that way if you want. So I can't say that's wrong. Brandon Pitts, question: How do we recognize our core issues and what role does the ego play in our transformation? So are you throwing 3 questions into one? How do you recognize your core issues? Well, this is why we find teachers. We have teachers, we have mentors who help us point that out to us so we can see it. One of the ways that you can recognize core issues is bear in mind that everything that comes out of you is your own internal experience. So if you have hatred towards somebody, if you have anger towards women, towards men, if you have issues about money, about people in power, I'm just throwing out ones that most people have, or that a lot of people have. That's your issue. If you have issues with people in power, the government is out to get me, it means you feel disempowered. Your core issue is you don't feel you have power. So follow your feelings, especially your negative feelings, because your negative feelings will show you what your issues are. And what role does the ego play in our transformation? What do you mean by ego? We have to have an ego in order to exist. Ego just is the Greek word, it means I. The letter I. I. Ego sum, I am. What is that? Descartes said, cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. Ego, I am. It just means that your identity. So what does your identity play in your transformation? So again, there's a negative, superficial connotation to the word ego that I don't like coming in that question. It's a great question. It's just really deep and it's just huge and it's hard for me to pinpoint something specific. It's too big for me to talk about in one soundbite. Jameson Colliday, question: I relate to the teachings of Loki as you described deeply. Is embodying that type of energy and being to shatter imposed illusions with love and being a mirror with others arrogant? This is why the shorter the question, the better. Is embodying that type of energy? By that type of energy, are you saying Loki? So are you asking me, is embodying Loki energy used to shatter imposed illusions with love on others? Well, that would be presumptuous. It might not be inaccurate, but it's pretty presumptuous to say that you have been sort of tasked with being Loki on Earth so that you can shatter people's imposed illusions. I'm not saying it's impossible. I wouldn't want to take that on. I don't think that's who I am. But that's because, my experience with Loki and Rahu is that, especially, as I get older, the more and more that I have direct experiences, man, they just hand my ass to me. I have such respect for that energy. I wouldn't even think about embodying that energy, because in order to embody that energy, you have to be completely enlightened, in my belief. Doesn't mean that wouldn't be true for you, Jameson. Is it being arrogant? I think there's definitely a danger of there being arrogance in assuming that you're going to take on that role. Because the thing about Loki is that Loki will play with you. He'll play with you as deeply as you want to play with him. But the more that it's like, wanting to spar with, you're wanting to spar with him. It's like wanting to spar with a master fighter. They'll spar with you, but they're gonna ring your bell, which means that if you decide you're gonna take on Loki's mantle, then he's gonna go, oh, all right, sure, you can do that, and now let's take a look at what needs to be focused in you. I'm thinking of one person in mind who actually took on Loki's name. And this was somebody who I had great respect for. And I mean, I don't know where this person is now. So I wish them all the best. I don't have any negative feelings towards them. But what ended up happening is that person went AWOL, and I found out that that person went through a lot of emotional and perhaps mental challenges. It means, you know, Loki's gonna take you to task. You're gonna take on that name. So myself, I wouldn't have the balls to try and do that. But you know, I can't speak for you. That's just my. All right, Jameson Colliday question continued. In direct relation with deities that want to help us in our chart and teachings, is it wrong to think of ourselves as developing in their image as embodiment of those divine forces? I don't know that that's wrong. You know, that's kind of part of Tantra. You know, Tantra, by the way, does not mean sexual. You know, the people who walk around saying that they practice Tantra and they're talking about some kind of sexual practice have no clue what they're talking about. Tantra has nothing to do with it. Tantra means technique, but it means the balance of masculine and feminine, which is why people confuse it with sexuality. But that would be a tantric thing to do. In ritual, you would do a ritual and you would do a mantra and you would take on the persona of a certain deity. So that's definitely something that happens. You know, you're catching me at a time of great humiliation in my life because I just recently got my ass handed to me in one of the most painful ways I can ever remember. And so I'm going through a lot of, you know, feeling quite humbled by the forces of the universe. So right now, I wouldn't feel like, there have been times in the past when I felt like I could do that. Right now, I wouldn't want to do that just because I don't want my ass handed to me anymore. So is it wrong? Well, I would get rid of the word wrong in your vocabulary because that implies, you know, judgment. You know, is it healthy? Is it rational? Is it helpful to my evolution to think of ourselves as developing in their image? That's a question you'll have to answer. People do it. I think there's definitely a danger of getting lost in it, of getting deluded, and there's also a danger of using it to escape your own mortality and your own limitations. Having said that, like I said, there are people out there that do that and probably teach it, so I can't say that it's wrong. I myself, I don't feel powerful enough to do it at the moment. So ask me again in a year. Maybe I'll have a different answer to that. All right. Again, just looking for the questions. See, I have to scroll through all the non-questions. It takes me a lot of time and annoys me. Yeah, Seb99, enemy in all caps, someone who wants to harm you. The only way somebody can want to harm you is if you unconsciously invite that into your life. So spend some time watching my channel so that you don't have to have enemies. You don't have to have any enemies, ever. If you have enemies, it's because you are projecting it out into your world. And so, yeah, some people have enemies, but there's ways to live without any enemies. John Caprine, question, how to heal self-betrayals in this life and avoid self-created torture chambers in the afterlife? So your question's coming from fear. You're aware of that, right? So what is the main thing I teach is that drop all the fear. if your only reason for healing self-betrayals is because you're afraid of getting into a torture chamber based on my example, then I would say the first thing you can do is just drop the fear. Just be okay with where you are. You know, Hela isn't out to punish you. So to answer your question, you know, since if what I said is true, which it might not be, this is my theory of, based on my experiences and my meditations, and I could be totally wrong. But based on that, it is my belief that you bring whatever is in your unconscious into the afterlife, and the afterlife is you live your unconscious. Your unconscious means you're not aware of it. The stuff that you push down that you don't want to deal with. The truth is we live it in this life too. Diseases are all of our unconscious garbage coming out in our, you know, getting lodged in our physical body and showing itself. So the way to avoid that is to be conscious. And the way to be conscious is to look at yourself and to be honest. The key to recovery in any kind of emotional or mental dysfunction is honesty. You know, I said such and such to that person the other day, but if I really think about it, I was really trying to, you know, in other words, here's a real simple one. You know, young guys do this a lot. You know, I told that girl last night that I loved her, but in reality, if I think about it, I was just horny. Because I really don't feel that towards her. That's honesty. Looking at yourself and being honest about your motives and your actions. And that's the thing that can heal anybody of anything. That can heal anybody of any mental or emotional thing. And that's why we have psychologists. That's why we have teachers and mentors, because mentors will look at you and help you to get honest. That's what the afterlife is. The afterlife is just a room where you have nothing to do but eventually just get honest with yourself. And when you do, then Hela says, okay, are you ready to move on? And then you get to move on to go to your next life. So to answer your question, drop the fear and just be honest and you'll be fine. Okay, I'm gonna call bullshit on somebody here. Zerlath says, Snorri suggests the relationship to the gods in the Prose Edda, but there is nothing to back that up. What does that mean? So, do you have an agenda against that? Snorri suggests the relationship to the gods. You know, I don't know. Maybe he has a different interpretation, but the myths are the myths. And anyway, I'd need to know more of what you're talking about, but I'm sensing some heathen, you know, assumptions and presumptions on the mythology, which I may or may not agree with. So that was my reaction to that. But I take it back because I'm not really sure I know what the hell you're talking about. Seb 999 question. Oh, we're going to talk about the enemies again. If an individual harms your daughter, why is it wrong to hate that individual? I didn't say it was wrong to hate anybody. I never said that it was wrong to have any feeling. Hatred is a normal human feeling. But Seb 999, I'm going to before I answer your question, I'm going to ask you point blank. It's a yes or no question. Has your daughter been harmed by somebody? Because if your daughter has not been harmed by somebody, then you're a cheap ass pussy who's taking somebody else's pain and using it to win an argument with me so that you can feel justified to hate. I hate that question. So I will apologize if you can say yes without lying that somebody harmed your daughter. And then I will have a different answer for you. But I'm pretty sure that nobody harmed your daughter. You're looking for some extreme bullshit example to back up your desire to want to indulge in your wimpy, pussy, fear, hatred nonsense. That's what I say. You can prove me wrong. Zerlath, question. Havamal 137 in context to Al says, they say the moon is good against hate. Is the sun good against shame? Yeah, I would say yes to that. The moon is good against hate because what is the moon? The moon connects to people. The moon is not the intellect which separates. The moon is the mind which connects. When you meditate, you become connected. You feel a connection, a oneness with everything. The moon represents the mother as well, represents nurturing. And what do mothers do? They nurture, they love, they take care, they find connections, they find similarities, they look for ways to mend, not to separate. So that the moon is good against hate, because hate wants to separate. And so the moon is good for the soul, because if hatred is what comes against the soul, then the moon is good for that, because the moon is the meditation on the light of the soul. It reflects back. The sun and the moon empower each other. From our perspective, they empower each other. Is the sun good against shame? Yes, because shame is when you think you've done something wrong. I did something bad, which is when you act out of alignment of your soul. When you act out of alignment from your soul, that creates shame. So the sun, if you take action towards your bravery, towards your highest goodness, then what does that do? That lets the mind expand, because the mind is the reflection of the soul. The moon is the reflection of the sun, which means that when the sun shines bright, the moon is going to shine bright too. So yes, I noticed that the first time you made a comment about that, and I didn't mention it, but I thought that was a great observation. In the wake of dusk, question: where can I find about symbolic syncretism between astrology and the runes? I don't know that you can. I have students that are working on doing that and have been suggested to me to do that. And I just haven't had the time or the motivation to do it. In the lieu of Gebo Libra, well, that's an assumption that Gebo and Libra go together. You might be making that based on the rune wheel. Anyway, that's something that I haven't delved into, so I can't even talk about it. Until I get an understanding and feel confident, I'm not going to talk about it. Brian Shaver, question: I have both Mars and Saturn exalted in my birth chart. Is that your Vedic chart? Because I don't know anything about Western. But Mars might be negatively aspecting or afflicting Saturn. I don't know. How can I tell? Well, how can you tell is by getting a reading from a qualified astrologer who can look at your chart and or study Vedic astrology so you can understand how that works. It might very well be, because my Mars and my Saturn, they're not staring. Let's see, which one is which? I can't remember which. I think my Mars is aspecting my Saturn. Mars and Saturn can be some of the best planets working for you. My Saturn is sitting in the 6th house in its own sign, and that's going to make me bulletproof against my enemies. Mars is sitting in his favorite house, which is the 3rd house. So that makes me, really good at communicating directly and strongly, if you haven't figured that out. So negative planets can have really good connotations. You can't look at astrology that superficially. So if you want to understand it, get some readings from qualified astrologers who can tell you what it means. Black Earth Productions, go to blackearthproductions.com. You can also look at his channel as well. He says, question: what is the trajectory of Hati and Skoll when it comes to astronomy and the constellations? I have no clue. No idea. If I don't know the answer, I don't know the answer. Brian Shaver, question: I am trying to teach myself Vedic astrology. Well, okay. I did a lot of self-teaching. You might want to go and learn it from somebody who has learned it. How do I differentiate the specific houses on the North Indian chart? So why don't I just save you some time? Stop wasting your time. Do you want to teach yourself brain surgery too? Or do you think maybe you should go to medical school and learn from doctors who know how to cut the brain open? Maybe it's time to stop jerking off and go and buy a course from somebody. You can buy one from me. I have one. But you can also go, there are plenty of others. I would stop wasting my time and I would go train if you really want to learn that. Brian Shaver, oh, okay, saying hi to Sethicus. All right, no more questions. Normally what I would do at this point is I would take a break, but let's see what I'm going to do. Do I have this? Yeah, I am going to take a short break, and I'll see if there's, by taking a short break, I'm going to share with you my experience of the most powerful energy practice I believe can be taught online, which of course is my celestial Qigong. So be back in just a couple of minutes here. Hi, I'm Michael Denny of SpiritTao.com, and this is Celestial Negung Part 1. Celestial Negung means that this is power that is descending from heaven. And the idea is that we are all microcosms of the entire universe. You are the entire universe, and everything around you is simply the projection. You are looking within yourself. So when you look up into the stars at night, you're actually looking deep within your own body. When you look at the sun, the moon, the trees, the flowers, you're looking within yourself. This is Negung. And so what we're doing is we're simply releasing that infinity from within us. You are tapping into and releasing the power that is within our own body, our own cells, our own organs. So one of the reasons that I'm making this DVD is in the hope that the essence and the spirit of the teaching of the Shang Qing arts can be taught to the world at large, and it is my hope that the core essence of what the Shang Qing tradition is will continue to live and grow and evolve. As we move on into the Aquarian age, everything is changing. I don't need to tell you that. The entire world is changing, and what we are seeing now is that if people hold on to external things, they are very challenged in life. And those who are making the transition into the next phase that we are moving into in the world as we approach 2012, those who look within and find their source of strength from within, those are the people who are getting the most out of life and will make the transition into the next phase of evolution most comfortably. It is my belief that the Shang Qing tradition is one method whereby human beings can evolve into the next level of being in the most comfortable fashion and be able to take advantage of the rapid, energetic, mental, and spiritual changes that are going on in the world today. Wow, that was over 10 years ago. That was me over 10 years ago. Hard to believe. All right, so I'm back. I'll see if there's any more questions, if there's anything else that I feel like saying here. By the way, you can get that at, I think, SpiritTao.com will take you to Celestial Qigong. But both of the links up here will take you that. By the way, these links are here for a reason. You know, and I went off on somebody earlier from what I thought was a fearful place, talking about, you know, what sounded to me like somebody who was wanting to be justified in being and having hatred towards others, and wanting to be given, having me co-sign the idea that it's okay to have enemies, to live in a world where you have enemies, and to, you know, use as an excuse to, you know, whatever. Neo.thunderwizard.com. That would be a really good link for that person, because what I teach in the video training courses about mastering the matrix is that the first thing you need to understand about the matrix is that the matrix which is the universe is designed to respond negatively to your fearful actions and beliefs. So the belief that you live in a world where there are enemies that you should hate is coming from fear. There's no other, you can't say you're a brave person and operate from fear. A brave person says, I don't care that that person hates me. I don't care that the government has it again. I don't care that there are aliens or demons out there. I don't care about that because I don't. I know that there are people out there that may or may not have my best interests at heart. I could care less. I don't give a crap about what they think. I have my own life to live. I'm not going to waste time thinking about them. So if you want to be fearful, go right ahead. But what I've come to find out is that the universe does not respond positively to fear. If that you are somebody that hates and you indulge in hatred, that means that you're full of fear, and guess what'll happen? You're going to create more enemies and you're going to create more reasons to be afraid. If you take fearless action towards what you want and you accept the assumption that the universe loves you, the universe loves you like a lover and wants to give to you. If you accept that assumption, then the universe responds positively to your fearless actions. Okay, so I came down on that guy pretty hard. I don't regret that, but it's somebody who hasn't been watching my channel and doesn't know what I teach, because you wouldn't ask that if you did. So those links are there. I recommend that you use them. And right now I'm looking for, what am I doing? I'm looking for another. This is what I'm looking for right there. All right, so let's, by the way, 50% off of astrology readings through the 1st of January 2020. So if you want to give yourself a gift for Christmas, and or if you've gotten an astrology reading and you want to give a friend or a loved one a gift, now's the time. And do it now before I get too busy, because when I do these specials, I tend to get a lot of orders. So you have some time to snap that up. All right, let's see once again if there are any questions. In the wake of dust, questions: what other languages do you work with? I don't understand your question. I'm familiar with a bunch of different languages, but I need to know, your question needs to be more specific for me to answer it. Okay, so Osiren, how much are your sessions? I'm so glad you asked that question, because then I get to say to you, right up here are all of the links. If you're asking a question like how much is this or how much is that, you have not clicked on courses.thunderwizard.com. That is the link that has everything, all of my classes, all of my teachings, all of my sessions, all of that. Thunderwizard.com as well. You can go there and learn how much it is to work with me privately as an apprentice. So I'm not going to answer that question because I want you to actually put the work in to go and click on the link. I'm assuming you're new to the channel, so I won't berate you for that, but there you go. Now your questions have all been answered. Zarelath question: what is the best state of mind for the next year of Jupiter in Capricorn? I haven't researched what's going to be happening next year with Jupiter in Capricorn yet. So if I don't have a good answer, I won't give it. Brian Shaver, I cannot afford it. What do you mean you can't? What can't you afford? Are you 16 years old and you're living at home with mom and dad? Are you an adult? So, let me give you some free advice. Okay? This would cost hundreds of dollars under other circumstances. I cannot afford it. Really? Do you want to be able to afford it? If the answer is yes, I want to be able to afford it, then the first thing you got to do is change your relationship to your understanding of money, saying I cannot afford it. Why can't you afford it? Because you're 14 and you live at home? Even if you're 14 and you live at home, there are ways that you can make money. You can't afford it because you're 26 and you have a job that doesn't pay very much. So whose fault is that? You can't afford it because you're going to college and you're barely making ends meet. You don't think that there aren't people in college who have figured out ways to make a lot of money and still go to college? You can't afford it because you don't believe that you deserve to have it. If you believed that you deserve to have it, whatever it is that you can't afford, you would find a way. So are you saying that you're lazy? That you just don't want to put the effort in? I'm extremely lazy, by the way. And by lazy, I mean I don't do things I don't want to do. I work 3 days a week. I work 2 hours a day. And then I make videos. And I make videos because I like doing it. Because it's fun. I don't consider it work. I live wherever the hell I want. I do whatever the hell I want to do. So it can't be because you're lazy. Because I'm lazy and I make a decent living. So are you proud of that? I mean, did you expect me to hear you just give that excuse, I can't afford it, and go, oh, okay, well, maybe later? Is that what you expect of me? You come on to learn from me as a teacher, and you expect me to say that to you? You know, there was last time I did a live Q&A, there was people were having a conversation with themselves. I didn't read it because it wasn't a question. But, somebody went off about how, my videos are a ruse, and it's a way to, that I get you, wanting something, and then I tell you have to pay for it. As though that's something to be proud of, to have that kind of conversation in public, to complain about how you don't or can't pay for something that you want. And that was my thought. It was just like, why is this person willing to let other people see that they're so trapped in their victimization that they want people to see them that way? Our ancestors, the ones who said those that die in battle go to Valhalla, you would never hear them talk like that to anybody in public. Because if you wanted something, you were expected to go out and get it. And no matter how challenging it was, if you wanted it, you deserved it, and you were going to find a way to get it. And then you would say, yes, I want that, and I wanted that for myself, and I went and I got it. So, I'm not trying to humiliate you, Brian Shaver, but if you want to get anywhere on this path that I teach, one of the first things you got to do is you've got to have enough respect in yourself that when something comes along and you want it, the question isn't can I afford it or can't I afford it? The question is, what am I going to do to get that? That I want that, and I'm going to do whatever it takes for me to have that. I'll tell you why a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people don't do that because they have been told by their parents or by society or by all of the other people. I mean, I don't know if you're in college, but let's say you're in college and in the dorm room and you've got a bunch of other guys in your dorm room complaining about all the money that they don't have. And so in order to fit in with people, you adopt being a poor victim. In order to keep mommy and daddy's love, you adopt being a poor victim. It's really popular now to be a victim. It is really popular. What is that one phrase, the one that's going around now? Epstein didn't kill himself? That's just an excuse for people to say, yeah, they're doing it to us, man. And I'm really woke. I'm woke to the reality that people are doing it to us. Like, that's something to be proud of, to be a victim. There's nothing proud about that. There's nothing to be proud of for that. So, I'm going to tell you that you can afford it if you want to. If you want to, you can afford it, whatever the hell it is, if it's something for me or somebody else. If you want to have what I have, you got to do what I do, and that's what I do. Whenever I see something that I want, If I don't have the money at the moment, I sit down and I go, how can I figure out a way to get the money to get that and still not do anything I don't want to do? That's how I live my life. I don't do anything I don't want to do. I never work more than I want to work. And I always come up with ways to figure out how to get income to have everything that I want in life. So if you want what I have, you got to do what I do, and that's what all my courses are about. So invest in yourself. If you're one of those people that you can't, you have a hard time. Now Brian's pissed off at me now, but and by the way, by the way, anytime somebody curses, YouTube automatically puts it on hold. So I'm going to read what he's saying here. He says, "You are projecting your insecurities and toxic shit onto me right now. You don't know me. I've been trying to teach myself because I am self-reliant." I had a teacher, an acting teacher, and one of the best things he ever said, he said a phrase to me, he said, not to me, he would say to all of us. And this is when people would go up and try to act a scene, and for whatever reason they weren't believable. And then he would say, "Why were you doing this? How come I didn't believe you?" And they would come up with excuses why they couldn't. And he would say, "The world is not interested in excuses, only results." Here's what I know, Brian Shaver. Now that you've called me out and you've called me names and you've now psychoanalyzed me. Instead of listening to what I said, and saying to yourself, is there something he's saying that I can use? But instead, you gave me some excuses. I'm giving you some information that you can use to have everything that you want in life. And what you're telling me is that you want to have the excuse to not have everything that you want in life and complain about it and give reasons why you can't have it. That's okay with me if you want to live like that. I don't want to live like that. And it doesn't mean that I don't, you're right. Everything I say, if I say it about somebody else, has to be true about me by definition. That's true. So everything you're saying, you're absolutely right. The difference is that I want to own my insecurities. If I have insecurities, if I wake up in the morning and those thoughts go through my head, which they do every day, I can't afford this, I wish I had that, those thoughts go through my head too. I want to own it. I want to sit myself down and go, why do I feel like that? How can I get what I want? I do not want to leave this life and look back on this life and say to myself that I wish that there was something else I could have done. I don't want to have any regrets. And that kind of communication to yourself, I can't afford it. I'm just reading what you said. I have been trying to teach myself because I'm self-reliant. If you're so what you're saying is, you didn't spell it out. What you're saying is, I don't want to pay somebody else or learn from somebody else. And so you're going to use the excuse that I'm self-reliant. But I just got through telling you, man, nobody can teach themselves. You want to learn how to be an astronaut? You want to learn how to be an Olympic weightlifter? You want to learn how to be, if you want to be good at anything, you're going to have to learn from somebody, which means you're going to have to take their time. You're probably going to have to pay them. And you should be proud of that. Be proud of the fact that I paid so-and-so to learn such and such. So again, there's nothing that you're saying that's making me want to co-sign your victimhood. Okay? That's what all this stuff is for. So I'm saying to everybody else, if you want something, invest in yourself. Investing in yourself is a message to the universe. When you invest in yourself, financially, buying whatever it is, something that you want, the universe says, let's give more of that to that person. That person is willing to sacrifice and invest in themselves. Okay. All right, I could continue to tear Brian Shaver a new one. Unwilling to listen to somebody who can potentially help them. Now Brian Shaver. So, did you teach yourself how to become a psychologist as well? because he says I have narcissistic personality disorder. Jameson Colliday, question. How can one confront the escapism that rears up in wanting to work directly with deities in altered states of consciousness and thunder wizardry? How can one confront the escapism? Well, it sounds to me like you're doing it. You know, just to help Brian Shaver, narcissists would never ask themselves if they have narcissistic personality disorder. So if you are asking yourself, you know, how can I avoid the escapism? That in itself says that you aren't in denial, that you have awareness that there's an escapism to it. So I would say that you're okay with that. You can't avoid it. If there is escapism within you, you can't avoid it. You can only be aware of it. Okay? So I know that I don't have narcissistic personality disorder, and the only reason I know that is because I've actually asked people, do you think I have narcissistic? I've actually asked that. Do you think I have narcissistic personality disorder? And somebody says, the fact that you asked that question means you don't have it. So I may have something else, but according to those in the know. Brian Shaver's his own guru. Right, so Brian, remember, everything is projection, right? You just accused me of having narcissistic personality disorder because I pointed out weaknesses in your thought process, which if you looked at, you could have used to make yourself happier and make your life better. You chose not to do that. Instead, you chose to attack me personally. And then you called yourself your own guru. But you just got through saying that I had narcissistic personality disorder. But that is actually, and I'm not my own guru. I'm not my own guru. I have a teacher. I have multiple teachers. So the difference between teaching yourself and having somebody teach you is that when you teach yourself, you don't know what you don't know. But you also said something that narcissistic personality disorder people say. They are their own guru. Okay, so now we know. We know a little bit more about you. Let's see. Lorena Grecu, question. What can I do if I feel guilty about being happy? What can you do about what, the feeling? Just accept that you have it. It's okay. It's okay that you have guilt about being happy. So don't try and get rid of the feeling. You can have the feeling as much as you want. The question of why, well, wait a second. You have guilt about feeling happy. So does that mean that you're a happy person most of the time and that you have guilt some of the time, or that you have guilt most of the time and then every now and then happiness will pop up? If I had you in session, if we were talking in session, I would probably ask you a bunch of questions, and I think I'd be able to help get to the root of that. But you don't have to do anything about it. Still keep taking actions towards your happiness. Still keep taking actions toward it. And then as the guilt comes up, then sit down and ask yourself the question, why do I feel guilty? Keep asking yourself that question, and you'll find out at some point, and if you can't do it yourself, then get a psychologist or get somebody, a mentor, a spiritual teacher, somebody, to help you see where the guilt comes from. In my experience, what happens is that guilt is anger, by the way. Guilt is not some form of humility. Guilt is anger towards somebody else that's turned inward. So your guilt, every time you feel guilty, you're angry. And so I don't know you, I don't know your history. I'm willing to bet that somewhere along the lines of childhood, when you were a child, what happened is that somebody shamed you about something that made you happy, or maybe just being happy in general. And so what's happening now is that your guilt is sort of a way of bullshitting yourself into thinking that you're humble. But what's really happening is that that shame gets stimulated when you're happy. And the guilt is really you're angry at whoever it is that's trying to keep you from being happy. So if you're able to get conscious about who you're angry at your mom or your dad or somebody who did or said something to make you feel that way, then you'll be one step further. Because anger is, those kinds of feelings are good because anger is trying to push you towards taking action, towards what you need. So anyway, those are just some of my thoughts about it right there. Yeah, Brian Shaver, I don't live in Southern California. And now you're just attacking me. I mean, it's just sad now. Now you're just, just lobbing attacks at me. It's really, I mean, seriously, bro. Is this how you want people to see you? I mean, if you're right, let's just say everything you said is right. I mean, obviously Southern California in your book is a bad thing because people in Southern California are what, liberals? And so now I'm assuming you're a right winger, and so that's bad. If that's true, why are you wasting your time? Why not just get off the channel and go watch something you want to watch? You've already concluded. You made your decision about me. Why are you wasting your time? Just, do something else. Let's see, what's going on here? Zeralath, question. What motivated Galar and Fjalar to kill Kvasir? How do we heal these dwarves in us? I haven't looked at that myth in a very long time, so that probably would be a really fun thing to look at. I should get myself reacquainted with all the mythology. So I'm not up on that, so I'm not going to answer a question I don't feel confident answering. Okay. We can all enjoy. I'm enjoying Brian Shaver's show here. We're watching somebody really, really flailing on his own ego stick right now. Black Earth. Oh no, that's yeah. I don't see any more questions here. Okay. All right. So that's it for me. I'm going to go ahead and end it right here. I'm indulging in my one of my failings, which is I do get into flame wars, and I do indulge in that, and I do enjoy eviscerating people that I find to be irrational and everything like that. However, it doesn't really accomplish anything for me or anybody else. So I'm going to say goodbye for today. neo.thunderwizard.com. If you see any of, what's his name? If you see any of Brian Shaver in yourself, where you want to justify why you're stuck in life and why you're afraid and why you're unwilling to invest in yourself, if you see that within yourself and you want to make a change, and if you want, again, if you want what I have, you got to do what I do. And what I do is I invest in myself. If there's something that I want, I will pay for it. I will do whatever I need to do to have what I want in my life. So if there are teachings that I have here, neo.thunderwizard.com or courses.thunderwizard.com or thunderwizard.com itself, if there's something in there that you want, look, you're only here on this earth in this body once. You don't get to be this person again. You owe it to yourself to invest in yourself, especially if you're somebody that wants to learn how to make more money. I teach you how to do that. I teach you how to understand how to get the universe to react to you in such a way where you can have everything that you want. So you owe it to yourself to invest in yourself. If you find yourself saying, like I was saying earlier, if you find yourself saying that you can't afford it, I want you to hear that. Hear yourself say, I can't afford that. If you're using that as an excuse, as though that is a valid excuse for not giving yourself something that you know that you deserve and you want, then you have become a slave to the system. It means that you have knuckled under and that you are willing to surrender your power to other things like society and economy and all that kind of stuff. I'm here to tell you that there literally is no limitation on what you can do. There's no limitation on the amount of businesses that can be created. With everything that you have, everybody listening to me, whether you are educated or not, whether you're 12 years old or 60 years old, regardless of where you are, there is something within you that you have a lot of passion about. That passion is money. If you can figure out a way, and everybody can, if you're willing to first of all be motivated enough, which means first off you don't give yourself permission to say, I can't afford something that I want. You don't give yourself permission to say that. You know, I'm not trying to make you feel bad. If you're okay not having something, I'm not saying you should have things. If you want to live frugally, I'm totally okay with that. I don't need you to, have a lot of money and buy stuff. It's okay with me if you live in a tent in the middle of the woods. I'm okay with that. If that makes you happy, go for it. But if you don't give yourself permission to say those things to yourself, then you'll say, since I want that, I deserve it. And since I want it, the universe wants me to have it. So there must be a way for me to get it. You can make a business out of anything. There's so many ways to make money. There's no reason not to have enough money to have everything that you want, regardless of whether you're in school or whether you're a kid or wherever it is. There's no excuse except the excuses that you allow yourself to have. So if you want what I have, you got to do what I do. And one of the things I do is I invest in myself. I just bought from an astrologer that I respect. I just bought an astrology report about some things in my life I wanted to take a look at. And I'm an astrologer, so I'm willing to invest in that. I'm getting ready to move. I'm moving to live in a house, 3-bedroom house on the beach, about 3 hours south of here. And it's going to cost me some money to do that. But I'm going to invest in myself, and I'm not willing to have any excuses for not having what I want. Okay? So if you want to get rid of those excuses, I especially recommend neo.thunderwizard.com. Those 4 tools can help with that. Okay? All right, I'm going to get off my soapbox now. I'll check and see if there are any last-minute questions. Yeah, and again, our friend here wants to make he wants to make the argument that all gurus are all self-taught, and I'm willing to bet that's just absolutely not true, especially people he talks about. But tell yourself whatever you need to tell yourself, man. Okay, you're the only person you're fooling is yourself. Nobody else is buying it. But if you buy it, if that works for you. All right, now he's moved on to attacking everybody else. So that's kind of fun to watch. I'll just let everybody see that in case they want to see that. All right, okay. What is this? Okay, so let's see. In the wake of dusk. Okay, I don't know what that is. Brian Shaver talks about people projecting a lot. You don't hear the irony in that? I do. Nope. That's it. No more questions. All right, so that's going to be it for me today. I will see you guys whenever I see you. Maybe tomorrow. I don't know. Whenever I decide to come back. All right, my friends. Take care. We'll talk to you all later. This is the one I want. Is this the one I want? Nope. Is this the one I want? Yep. All right, you guys. I will talk to you all later.